talking about multiplying and dividing real numbers. This is lesson 1.6. So our goal for today are to find products and quotients of real numbers. So the first thing we're going to be focusing on is multiplying real numbers. Now the question we need to ask ourselves is what happens when we multiply two real numbers with the same sign? So the same signs means they're either both positive or both negative. When we multiply two real numbers with the same sign, the answer is going to be positive. So what happens when we multiply two real numbers with different signs? So that means one positive, one negative. Well, the answer is negative. These are different rules than addition. So multiplication and addition have different rules for their operations. So let's look at some examples. Here we have 12 times negative 8. We have one positive, one negative number. So I know my answer is going to be negative, and I just take 12 times 8, which is 96. So I have negative 96. 32 times 1/2. Well, 32 and 1/2 are both positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. They have the same signs. 32 times 1/2 is 16, so that's positive 16. Now these 1/2 and 5/6, again, both of those are positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. When you multiply fractions, remember you multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 6 is 12. So I have 5 over 12. Now D has an exponent, but remember what this 2 means is that you're just taking negative 5 times itself twice. Now these two have the same sign. Even though they're both negatives, whenever you see the same sign, it makes a positive answer. 5 times 5 is 25. Now what happens if we're multiplying more than just two terms together? What are the rules for that? Well, the sign rules for multiplying more than two real numbers. If you have an even number of negative signs, your answer is going to be positive. If you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer is going to be negative. So let's try some examples. Here I have 4 times negative 3 times negative 1 times 2. So I worry about the signs first. I count how many negative signs there are. There are 2. 2 is an even number, so I know my answer is going to be a positive number. So now I don't have to worry about the signs anymore. I just multiply my numbers together. 4 times 3 is 12, times 1 is still 12, times 2 is 24. So if I look at B, I have 1, 2, 3 negative signs. Well, 3 negative signs is odd, so that means my answer is going to be negative. Now, when I'm actually multiplying, I don't worry about the negatives anymore. 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 4 is 8. So my answer is negative 8. Here I have 4 negative signs. So again, 4 is even, so my answer is going to be positive. I don't pay attention to the negative signs anymore. And I have 4 times 1, which is 4, times 5, which is 20, times 2, which is 40. Now here I have negative 1 to the third power. Remember, order of operations, we always have to deal with exponents before we can multiply. So I can't count the number of negatives yet. The first thing I need to do is rewrite this with 3 negative 1s, because that means 3 of them. I have 5, I have negative 2, I have 3. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 negative signs, which makes a positive, because that's an even number. So now I don't have to worry about the negative signs anymore, I just multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, times 1 is 1, times 5 is 5, times 2 is 10, times 3 is 30. So my answer is 30. That was multiplying real numbers. We also need to know how to divide real numbers. Now here's some vocabulary before we divide real numbers. First of all, multiplicative inverses. right? It's just saying for any number, its inverse is 1 over that number. So if you have 5, its multiplicative inverse is 1 over 5. Okay? We also have reciprocals. Now a reciprocal is if you have A over B, the reciprocal of it is B over A. Basically, you're flipping the numerator and the denominator. This is important when we're dividing because we can't really divide without a calculator, but we can, instead of dividing a number, we can multiply by the reciprocal. So we can change division into multiplication. So let's look at some examples. Here I have 25 divided by negative 5. Well, 25 divided by negative 5. Well, this one I could probably do without changing it to multiplication, right? We know 25 divided by negative 5 would be negative 5. Now, division has the same multiplication rules, or is the same as multiplication rules for signs. I have one negative, right? So my answer is going to be negative. Now here, negative 15 divided by 1/3, this is going to be hard to divide. So instead of dividing by 1/3, I can multiply by its reciprocal. Remember, reciprocal means you flip it around. So I'm going to multiply by 3 over 1. Well, 3 over 1 is just 3. 15 times 3 is 45, and my answer is going to be negative. Again, dividing fractions is pretty difficult, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to multiply. It's always the second term that you flip, find the reciprocal. There's a negative sign there, so I keep the negative sign, but it's now 3 over 2. Remember, fractions you multiply across, so negative 3 times negative 3 would be a positive 9. 4 times 2 is 8. So I have 9 over 8. And then the last example, I have 2/3 times negative 3 over 1. Again, we're going to want to multiply across. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 3 times 1 is 3. Now this one you can actually simplify. Negative 6 divided by 3 now is negative 2. And there is my answer. So this was multiplying and dividing real numbers.